Airplanes are basically 200-ton metal birds that refuse to fall, and the explanation you learned in school might be kind of wrong. Not wrong, just physicists arguing at 2 a.m. wrong. Is it Bernoulli? Is it Newton? Is it tiny air molecules having an existential crisis? Turns out, wings don't politely split air and meet up later, they aggressively shove it downward while creating a chaotic pressure mess on top. So why does that keep a plane up? And why do experts still debate the details? Buckle up, because flight is less like a neat equation and more like controlled chaos with really good PR. The wing is basically a very expensive way to karate chop the atmosphere. That classic textbook story air splits at the front of the wing. The top air has to meet up with the bottom air, so it speeds up and makes low pressure. Yeah, that's a neat bedtime story. But air is under no obligation to keep appointments. In reality, the air over the top usually gets there way earlier. The more robust picture is Newton's third law. If the wing deflects air downward, the air pushes the wing upward. You can literally see this in the swirling wake behind a plane, like a giant invisible river being shoved down. Pressure differences still matter, but they're part of the same story. The wing's shape and angle of attack create higher pressure underneath and lower pressure above, which together add up to a net upward force. Think of it like leaning your hand out a car window and tilting it. Suddenly your hand wants to fly upward because you're redirecting the airflow. Planes do that, just with more math, more metal, and fewer bugs in their teeth. So when someone says, "It's just Bernoulli," you can nod politely, then imagine the wing aggressively punching air downward like it owes it money, because that pushback is what's holding a 200-ton metal tube in the sky. There is a tiny civil war in physics classrooms over why planes fly, and it centers on a myth that refuses to die. The equal transit time idea says air that splits at the leading edge must reunite at the trailing edge, forcing the top air to speed up. It sounds tidy, like a rom-com where everyone meets at the airport. The problem is, experiments show the top air gets there first, no dramatic reunion scene required. So why does the myth persist? Because it's simple, memorable, and wrong in a very comforting way. The real explanation involves pressure gradients, viscosity, and the fact that air is a fluid with feelings, by which I mean it sticks, swirls, and forms a boundary layer along the wing. The wing's angle of attack turns the flow downward, creating a circulation pattern that lowers pressure on top and raises it below. Mathematically, you can describe this with Bernoulli's equation, or with momentum change, or with circulation theory, and physicists will happily debate which explanation is more fundamental, like it's a sports rivalry. It's not that any one of these is fake, it's that each is a different lens on the same messy reality. So yes, lift involves faster flow over the top, but not because the air is racing to keep a promise. It's because the wing has bullied the flow into a new pattern. Physics, less like a neat story, more like a group chat, where everyone is technically correct and also slightly annoying. If curved wings were the secret sauce, paper airplanes would just be sad, flat pancakes. But they fly, sometimes beautifully, despite having all the aerodynamic sophistication of a folded receipt. The real key is angle of attack, the tilt of the wing relative to the incoming air. Tilt a flat plate into a stream of air, and it will deflect the flow downward, creating lift. That's why stunt planes can fly upside down. They just adjust their angle so the wing still pushes air down relative to the plane. The curved shape, called an airfoil, is more about efficiency and stability than raw possibility. It helps generate lift at lower angles and reduces drag, which is great if you prefer your flights to be smooth and your fuel bills to be less horrifying. But fundamentally, lift is about redirecting airflow and creating a pressure difference, not about having a pretty curved top like a croissant. In fact, some early aircraft used almost flat wings and still got off the ground, admittedly with the enthusiasm of a reluctant cat being picked up, but they flew. So the next time you see a wing, don't think fancy curved magic. Think angled surface shoving air down. It's less poetic, more aggressive, and much closer to the truth. Every airplane drags behind it two giant, invisible corkscrews of air called wingtip vortices, and they're the aerodynamic equivalent of glitter. Once they're there, they linger and cause problems. These vortices form because high-pressure air from beneath the wing tries to sneak around the tips to the low-pressure region above, creating a rolling motion. The result is a downward deflection of air across the whole wing, known as downwash. That downwash is the smoking gun of lift. If the air behind the plane is moving downward, the plane must have been pushed upward. conservation of momentum doesn't do vibes, it does accounting. The downside is these vortices also create induced drag, which is like paying a tax for making lift. That's why you see winglets, the little upturned tips on modern wings. They're basically aerodynamic bouncers, reducing the strength of those swirling troublemakers. Pilots even have to be careful about wake turbulence from larger planes because those invisible tornadoes can flip smaller aircraft like a dramatic plot twist. So when a plane flies overhead, imagine it knitting a pair of giant spirals into the sky, leaving a signature that says, "I was here, and I pushed a lot of air downward to prove it." If you ask 10 physicists why planes fly, you might get 12 answers and a minor argument. Some will say it's all about pressure differences, lower pressure above, higher below. Others will say it's about momentum, air gets shoved downward, so the plane goes up. And the correct response is yes. These are not competing explanations. They're two ways of describing the same physical process from different angles. Pressure is just force spread over an area, and those pressure differences are exactly what accelerate the air downward. Meanwhile, the downward moving air implies an upward force on the wing. It's like describing a party as people dancing versus music causing movement. Both are true, and neither fully captures the chaos of your friend attempting the worm. The real fluid dynamics involves viscosity, boundary layers, flow separation, and equations that look like they were invented to scare undergraduates. In practice, engineers use a mix of theory, wind tunnel testing, and computational models to design wings that produce lift efficiently without stalling or creating too much drag. So the controversy isn't that physicists don't know why planes fly, it's that reality is rich enough to support multiple valid descriptions, and humans love picking favorites. Meanwhile, the plane just shrugs, pushes air down, and gets on with being airborne.